As you travel around the country, how have you yourself been able to uh, do what you want to do and live within different societies, from I guess from the south to the west to east? How have you done that and still feel comfortable within yourself?
Because it's in myself that I have a sense of who I am. I was talking to you earlier before we started this, and I was relating the experience of the young lady this week who talked to me about going to an African American museum and reading about the Middle Passage, reading about her experience or the experiences of people who go to Cape Coast and years later can still smell the smells and hear the sounds. You know, I watched our president this week um, when he went to Ghana, and I was looking at him afterwards and looked at that hollow look on his face. I knew that look because I've gone to the castle. I've stood there, I've smelled the smells, and I've heard
What is that castle?
the slave castle, the dungeons where they held the slaves. It's basically just a concrete building.
So, are you actually saying that this many years later, you can still smell smells and still actually hear sounds?
You can hear it, and initially I thought not the smells, but the sounds. I wondered if there was some kind of sound that they were piping in for an authentic experience, but there's no such thing, you know. And I've read about people, and I've actually talked to someone else who's gone and had that same experience. And when I was there, once I had the experience, I shut down for a week because I thought, this is unbelievable, you know. Yeah, we get up and we go out and we patronize systems, that helps to perpetuate the mentality from that system. I look at how we treat each other and we treat ourselves, you know, and I guess I don't understand it. It's how do we ever get out of that mentality? How do we ever get out of the slave mentality? But the importance of seeing President Barack Obama, after the interview, during the interview after his experience there, and talking to the young lady this week just reminded me that it really, we have to take personal responsibility for it, and nobody else can do it for us. Again, those experiences happen, and there is still something very real and tangible about it. And if we don't get up every day walking through this world with the mentality of I have got to do different, I have got to be different, or try something else, try a new way, help myself in every way possible, then we're never going to get out of that slave mentality. You know, there doesn't need to be a formal written plan because we're doing the work for them, right? We're buying into the systems that that started it, as well as the things that are still in place, that they put in place. The TV, the dramas that show us as the crooks and criminals, far greater than other people. You know, we have to step outside of that. Turn off the TV. Go read a book. You should be able to tell me, you know, kids can tell us scripts of movies, you know, about what the good guy, bad guy said, and we can't regurgitate our history to the same degree. Sure, I'm probably guilty of that to some degree as well, but again, step by step by step.
I don't know how many people you've had a chance to meet from other cultural groups, but what I've noticed is when history is taught around here, there's a definite lack of enthusiasm behind the teaching of it to the point to where you don't make you the listener of as history is being spoken to you, you don't feel the connection. It's not being made real. I mean, the people are teaching it, but they're not selling it. What will it take, or I guess to be truly educated, you have to do your own research.
Well, to be educated, you have to do your own research, but you have to be willing to know it, right? And I think the disconnect that you're talking about, I think we think if we disconnect from it, then we're not responsible for it, or we're not responsible to it. and it's easier just to unplug or to disconnect from it and say, well, I didn't know, you know, then, I'm not responsible, or it's not my fault, or I just didn't know.
Growing up in Louisiana, now, but from what I read about Louisiana and David Duke, I know all of Louisiana is not governed by the David Duke types of individuals, but yet, how were you able to stay strong mentally in that environment, and did that come from your parents necessarily?
Well, couple thoughts. First, I'm going to say our country is governed by the David Duke type, and they might not be as vocal or out sitting like David Duke is, but that David Duke mentality, just like the slave mentality, is very much in place. And so they might not have on the white road, but you can connect the dots thereon. And I grew up part in Louisiana, and I left and I moved to Las Vegas, and went through high school and stuff there. But you go back and forth to visit the relatives, um, and you still see. So my mind says it doesn't matter where in this country I grow up. The experiences really are a lot the same. But the staying strong again, I'm very much into personal development. I'm very much an introspective, thought-driven person. And so my internal strength comes from that. It comes from watching my mother, my grandmother, watching the lives of my sisters now. I teach life skills classes, and, I love a chance to sit and talk with especially young girls and women about kind of who we are and how we develop that inner strength to become who we are. You know, how do we how do we find the courage to walk through, continue to walk through? And so that kind of stuff's very empowering to me. I like to read. I love to travel. I've taught abroad in Korea. I've traveled to. I was a merchant seaman for a while and got to kind of travel around the globe and on my own. I go and travel, and so it's extra empowering to go into a culture. Like I taught in Korea for 2 years, and during my orientation, one of the guys told me, "Where you're going, they're going to be afraid of you." And I thought, one of me in a city full of y'all, so to speak, or them. Like, why would they be afraid of me? I don't speak the language. It's not like I can do anything and get away with it, or do anything and get away. So where is the fear factor? I'm far outnumbered. Um, and so there was a sense of me that didn't really believe him. And then over the course of time, I watched it play out. And, when the children, my students came out and said, you know, we were afraid of you when you first got here. There was that moment like snap, he was right. And again, I would ask them, why were you afraid of me? Like, what did you think I was going to do to you? What could I do to you? And the fear is just the difference in the not knowing, and I think that's the great value to traveling to other cultures.
I mean, were they afraid of you as being an American, or were they afraid of you as being a black woman, or were they afraid of you as being taller than what they are?
To be honest, I never could get a clear answer of what the fear was about for them, except just that it was different. They didn't know what to expect, maybe. Um, Another very interesting experience, I was holding someone's baby, and later I was talking to the woman that was my co-teacher, and she was, I talked about having this strange feeling about just being watched, and then they were like, we didn't know what you were going to do to the baby. What? What do you think I'm going to do to the baby? It's a child. What could I do to it? Why would I harm it? And so, again, just that strange sense of not knowing, you know, I don't fully understand it myself. But, I've read other stories about, that fear, and they knew I was an American, but I think overall their sense of American is white. Even in the placement of the job, I worked in the countryside, which was fine. But, later I was told, like they want uh, essentially the white people who come to teach English, they want them in the cities. They represent what's American. They represent that ideal, you know. And I thought, wow, interesting.
So now we have a brand new opportunity then. I guess there must be a room for renaissance to happen now with a black president. Does that necessarily mean that the doors of opportunity, not just opportunity, but the way that we're being perceived by the world might be changing now? What do you think?
I think it's definitely going to change it and has changed it. I mean, just through his campaign, I think from that point, the change started to happen. Um, and I didn't listen to the address, but, just reading the news caption of his address to the NAACP, I think there was the realization, yes, that some change has already happened and will continue to happen, but a lot still needs to change. And so, we have to start somewhere, and this was a good place to start.